It is our trick or treat. We have three scenarios here. Were they tricks or are they a treat for the fans and for the programs? First up, we have James Franklin in a presser just recently comes out and says, "We're focused on Illinois, boys." This is after the Illinois game, after you've lost to the Illini, 5 days before you have to go into the shoe and play Ohio State, and we have James Franklin coming out saying we're focused on Illinois. That's the wrong team to be focused on, buddy. But could this be a treat? Is he trolling Ohio State here, saying no big deal, or is this just a complete, trick here? Guy's out of his mind. Tom, we'll start with you on this one.
Definitely a trick. What a rough press conference for James Franklin. I was looking up the article this morning and I almost spooked myself out watching it. And my younger brother goes to the most haunted town in the USA,
Ooh.
down in Florida. So to hear that, I mean, something going on at Penn State over in Happy Valley. I'm not so sure right now. They might as well call it Spooky Valley. James Franklin, man, if he doesn't get his act together, I mean, he might be on his way out all of a sudden. They've lost a couple games, but obviously they lost to Iowa and now Illinois. I almost spooked myself out. I almost said Ohio State there, guys. But yeah, it's going to be, man, if he doesn't get his act together, it's going to be 3 losses in a row. That's going to look really bad because they had such a promising start to the season. Definitely a trick for me.
All right, Andy, trick or treat?
Oh, Illinois lives in his head rent free. Anytime you let Bert and the boys waltz into town and just get whatever they want and just absolutely baby you, you're gonna think about it for a few weeks. Not only he didn't mention Illinois just once, he said Illinois multiple times in the press conference. Here's another thing. He said, yeah, he's excited to go play at the big house. He called Ohio State. That's the opposite. It's the horseshoe. So he is all over the place. I think he's got some problems. He did just hire that new agent. He just signed with CAA. Maybe he's thinking about this USC job, boys. He's got a lot of shit on his mind. I'm going to go trick. But yeah, Illinois is absolutely rent-free in James Franklin's mind right now.
Yeah, I'm going to trick as well. This is just honestly embarrassing, the entire thing. And it's so embarrassing, actually, that I think if I'm USC, I'm taking him off the coaching search just from the way things have played out. This is like when you watch those war movies and a shell comes in and just huge explosion and the guy is, everything's raining and he's shell-shocked. That's James Franklin in that press conference. He just had no idea what was going on. If I'm a Penn State fan, I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? This program is a mess right now. Like you said, Tom, they started out really well. Good beginning of the season here for the Nittany Lions, but this is just, this is code red for me. So I'm going trick here. Don't think he was trolling Ohio State at all. And I think they probably get absolutely shellacked in this game coming up. Next, we have the new overtime rules. So the NCAA implemented these new rules, saying that this was here to prevent injuries because, the thought was there'd be less plays. This is, sort of all been in the news in the mix since that LSU Texas A&M game that you referenced earlier, Andy. But Illinois this weekend goes 9 overtimes with Penn State, and we get a huge injury. Well, maybe not. It was only 39 yards worth of injury, but Stowski breaks his arm in like the 6th or 7th overtime. So are these new rules a trick or a treat, Andy?
Trick. I mean, college football before this season had the best overtime ever. You give both teams the ball at 25 and you just let them go. I mean, I don't know what the change is for. These two teams probably aren't the best example of teams that are good at converting 2-point conversions. And I guess that shows you really how hard it is to score from that in close because, I mean, there's only so much you can do in that situation. But it was still exciting. Don't get me wrong. But when you have like 6 or 7 straight overtimes of nobody scoring any points and just wants to drop passes but yeah, two teams just decided to stop trying to run the ball, especially the one that ran for 357 yards, decided to stop running the ball until like the 7th overtime. But that's not what I'm talking about. I go trick. I love the old college football overtime rules. I think they're perfect. Give each team the ball from the 25. I think the NFL should do something similar, except maybe you move it back to like the 40 or something like that. That's another conversation. It's still exciting, I guess, but it's not the same. It's not the same. I go trick.
Yeah, I thought you might be pushed into treat on that one because of the result of the Illinois game. But
if it works out every time, then sure. But gave me too many gray hairs.
Yeah, these rules just seem so ridiculous. So to be clear here, for anyone who did not watch the game and hasn't seen a 9 overtime game yet. With these new rules, first possession is regular. Then starting with the second one, they have to go for a 2-point conversion. Then after that, it changes again, and everything is just a 2-point conversion, which I think defeats the purpose of the idea that there would be less plays. If you're always starting from like the 20, 25, college kickers, we talk about them all the time. If you stop someone outside the 15-yard line, there's still like a 30% chance a college kicker misses that kick. So there's 3 results you have there. Whereas once you start bringing them into two-point range, they're taking off from the 3-yard line. Obviously, in different scenarios where there's less parity between teams or performances that day, sure, it could end very quickly. But like we saw with the Illinois-Penn State game, the defenses were getting it done for the first couple overtimes. Illinois' lines were fantastic all game long. So, it was just like a never-ending cycle. And it just looked awful. Like you said, Andy, the old rules were one of the most fun things, fun overtimes of any sport out there. So I'm going trick. Tom, what's your call?
Let me say this. Last Saturday was a treat. I think we could all agree on that, correct? That was a treat.
Yep.
But these new rules are a trick. This is not really ideal. And I'm just thinking back to week 1. If Notre Dame doesn't win the game on that first OT, you're in Florida State, you're in Seminole Nation, and the crowd is against you. I mean, they might as well lose that game. I mean, you want to make sure the best teams win, right? Like, I mean, you don't want to make sure the best team deserves to win the game, wins the game. You don't want to base your chance off luck from the 2 or 3 yard line every single time. And don't get me wrong, Illinois deserved to win the game on Saturday. They were the better football team on the field, but that's not always going to be the case. It's not always going to be the case, and it's unfortunate. Times change, and I guess the 3 of us are clearly not adapting very well to this change. So I think we're all 2 for 2 on tricks. I think we're spooking out our crowd too. Why is everybody agreeing on the same thing?
That is very spooky, very unnormal, paranormal even maybe for this show. But yeah, to be fair, I think there was a lot of complaints about it after the game. People were like, what the fuck is going on? So I think they probably will end up changing it back. Maybe not next year, but the year after. Also, just before we move on to the next one, it took kind of like the spice out of overtimes watching them. I don't know if they were supposed to do this. I think the refs might have just not known the rules entirely. I'd have to look this up. But after every single 2-point conversion attempt, once they got to the third overtime, they were letting the teams pick which side of the field. Obviously, Penn State wanted to go in front of the student section. Obviously, Illinois wanted to go to the other side, not in front of the student section. So they're doing one play, then walking 100 yards down the damn field, doing one play. They did that 18. I mean, those players probably put in more work with these new overtime rules, just walking down the field to watch the plays. So just a ridiculous situation. And then the third one here for trick or treat, we have the USC head coaching shortlist leak. Put leak in parentheses because I'm not sure how much of a leak this technically is. Carson Palmer, ex-Trojan himself, well respected within the program, came out, was interviewed, asked if he knew a little bit about their head coaching search. He said yes. Obviously, they pressed him a little bit more, and he decided to go say, you've got Penn State, you've got Iowa State, you got Cincinnati. Obviously, not wanting to say the actual names fully, but then he ends with, and you've got a wild card like Mike Tomlin. Then Mike Tomlin comes out and says, no, there's not enough money in the world. Was this a trick by USC and Carson Palmer here? Or was this a treat, trying to get a little bit of info on guys that, maybe they haven't interviewed yet and just want to get a read? Andy?
I don't know. It sounded like, if you watch the interview, Palmer sounded like he didn't know he wasn't, sounded like he wasn't supposed to say that and he didn't know. But it was funny. I thought Tomlin responded pretty well to it. He goes, I never say never, but never. I don't know why he would leave the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's the third longest tenured head coach in the NFL, and you're coaching for one of the most historic franchises in that in the NFL, for that matter, and with an organization that really doesn't fire their head coaches that often. I guess this would be more of him, stepping down and going to USC, but I just don't see it. But I'm gonna say treat. College football is weird. They do shit like this all the time, like a smoke screen type thing. Like they'll say Mike Tomlin, and they've got some other guy that's just waiting in the wings. So, I'm gonna say treat.
Yeah, I'm going treat as well. For the main reason that, listen, first of all, the James Franklin thing, how he was flustered. I think he is actually, I'll say, a serious candidate for USC, and this may be playing a role because all of these events happened within like 48 hours of each other. So this, may have played a role in his weird press conference. But to me, this is a treat. The Mike Tomlin thing was a little weird, especially after the response. Dan Patrick says that's pretty spicy with Tomlin there. I like it. And Palmer says, "Is that the first time you've heard of it?" So that was a little weird to go to add in there. But to me, I think this is a good way to flesh out serious candidates. We all know this is a very big program. We've argued, earlier in the show in previous weeks whether this or the LSU job was the bigger one. But this, regardless of what anyone thinks is the bigger of the two, this is still a very large program, and we know negotiations are going to be long and maybe a little messy because all these coaches that are going after are still tenured at their current colleges. So this is maybe a way to flesh out who is actually serious about the job, and we might have got a tell from James Franklin. Because he's pretty much been echoing, but very awkwardly, or at least in an awkward manner. Things are weird, but my concentration is here at Penn State. That was in a press conference after, so maybe he's gone. Maybe that deal's already locked up. So the conversation from Palmer was weird, but as for USC, I think this is a treat. Despite the way that the conversation between Palmer and Patrick went, Tom.
Man, we're really doing the monster mash here in this segment. This is obviously a treat because Carson Palmer is revealing insider info that may or may not be true. Bringing up Mike Tomlin. Guys, it's not going to happen. Who would leave the Pittsburgh Steelers for the USC Trojans, especially a week or two after Notre Dame smacks them? Pardon me, but yeah, I wouldn't want to go to USC. Really? But that's some funny stuff right there. Carson Palmer has his hopes up just a little bit if he thinks Mike Tomlin's coming to Southern Cal. Not happening, but yeah, definitely a treat. Get your candy out, folks. 3 for 3 here.